they say when you are about to die, your life flashes before your eyes. Well, for me, when he died, my future flashed before my eyes. Like all of the plans that I had expected to have with him and everything, like all of that just flashed before my eyes and then disappeared. And I was just like, what the heck am I supposed to do?
Hi, I'm Kristen Bruinius, and this is the Overcomers Podcast. I am so excited for you to hear the stories of incredible people overcoming trials and turning them into triumphs. From everyday moms and dads to entrepreneurs to community leaders and beyond, you'll see how everyone has a story of overcoming, and those stories are what connect us all. Let's hop right in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Overcomers Podcast. I'm Kristen Bruinius, and I am so glad you are here. This week is just like every other week. We have an awesome guest, and let me give you a little teaser. She has 13 children, and I feel like anybody who has 13 children is worth my attention because they are extra special. Sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed with my 3, who I love dearly. Jenny just offers such a unique perspective, especially in the wake of everything that happened with Charlie Kirk's assassination. She speaks of the loss of her husband and even in the midst of recent events, how she has found herself being inspired by Erica's strength, as all of us have. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. I hope that it really inspires you. And if you're someone who is struggling with grief, I hope that this brings comfort to you. If you know someone who is struggling with grief, do me a favor, send it to them. You never know if this might just be the encouragement that they need today. And remember that grief comes in many, many different forms. Of course, the loss of someone, but also it could be grief in, a change of relationship or a change of situation or anything like that. And I think that we can all find comfort through the things that Jenny had to say. And so do me a favor, hit like or follow. We are on Instagram at the Overcomers Podcast with KB. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or Amazon, make sure you hit follow and share with a friend. And as always, I just want to mention that this podcast is not possible without the excitement that we get with my partnership with Soul Naturals. And so those of you who aren't familiar with Soul Naturals is a boutique supplement company that I'm associated with. It specializes in using these special plants called adaptogens. I've actually been using these products for 8 years and have built an entire business around them. What makes adaptogens so unique is not only do they provide steady energy, more mental, physical balance, improved stress response, but they contain the vitamins and minerals that you need on a daily basis to support you. And as this episode does focus on grief, we have to remember that when whatever we're going through, but especially during times of grief or stress or anxiety or any of those things, we do need the support. So check them out. The website is soulnaturals.com. It's SOLLE, and use the code Kristen for $10 off. Your purchase goes to support this podcast through that affiliate link, and I am so grateful for those of you who choose to go there and fall in love with the products just as I have. So I hope that you check it out, and let's hop right into the episode. All right, everybody. This week we have Jenny Burba with us. So excited to have you here, Jenny. Jenny and I connected over social media, and she just has an incredible story to tell. But before we get started, Jenny, you want to tell everyone how many children you have?
I currently have 12 children, 13 in total.
Yeah. So right there, I was like, okay, this girl's an overcomer, because anyone who could have 13 children, 12, is pretty incredible and a pretty awesome person. So I'm really, really excited to have you on and to have everyone hear your story of what God has done in your life and continues to do in your life. So where do you want to start?
Well, I think maybe the best place to start would be my, I guess the beginning of my adulthood, which started with a teenage pregnancy.
So when you say teenage, how old is teenage?
I was 17 when I got pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it was the summer of my senior year, between junior and senior year. And then I gave birth to him the February of my senior year. So yeah, that was hard. I mean, on so many levels. Obviously, I was raised with a very strong Christian foundation, so there was a lot of shame and guilt and just a lot of you know, my parents didn't know how to respond to it, and I was homeschooled at the time, so my mom actually had me move up to Maryland from Virginia to live with family up there for a little while. She and I have since had conversations about all of that and everything, and we've resolved so much of our relationship beyond that. But it was really hard because I had to move away from all my friends, and then, you know, when I had him, it was shortly after that everyone was getting ready for prom and graduation, and I mean, I had a baby, so I really wasn't able to participate in all that. I did go to prom junior year, which is what resulted in the baby. But
Word of
but
caution. That
yes,
happens.
it does, and it happens to people that you would not ever guess it would happen to. You just like drop all of your you drop your defenses and fall into that trap sometimes.
So you were homeschooled, but you still went to the local proms? How did that?
So I went to regular traditional school up until my sophomore year of high school. So junior senior year is when I was homeschooled. So there's also a little bit of, if my mom hadn't have decided to homeschool me, what would life have looked like? Maybe that rebellious nature of me, because I did not appreciate being taken out of the high school junior year away from all my friends. But but I went to prom with my husband. My first husband, he went to public school, so I went to his senior prom because he was a senior when I was a junior.
Okay.
And then I also went to a homeschool prom.
Okay. Okay. So you're 17, 18 years old with a newborn, and what happens next?
So, there was a lot of going to counseling, trying to figure out what to do, what the next steps were. I was being highly encouraged to put the baby up for adoption. But just, I was still connected to my faith. I still prayed a lot. I actually went to a youth group while I was pregnant, and I was so amazed at how welcoming a lot of those kids were, teenagers were, despite my circumstances. And so, just thinking and praying on it, I decided that this was my child. I didn't, I wanted to keep him. I didn't want to separate part of my family because I knew I was going to have more kids in the future. So we did eventually get married, me and the baby's father. And it was, I think both of us, was more of like this is the right thing to do. We made this mistake. We need to, try to be a family together. But it was very difficult. We were very young, and he had a lot of self confidence issues, I think he had a lot of childhood wounds of not feeling good enough. And so he became very controlling and very emotionally manipulative just to try to cling and grab hold of me to make sure that he wouldn't lose me. He didn't want to lose me, so he felt like the best way to not lose me was to hold me as tight as he could. Um, so it was like I lost myself. I lost my identity. My identity became my motherhood. I poured myself into my children, and eventually I did start homeschooling them. And so my life and keeping my children and keeping him happy was my life.
It's so funny that you use the word identity, and those who have listened to multiple episodes of this podcast are getting this theme that guest after guest after guest comes on and says something about identity and losing their identity or finding identity in something. And over and over and over again, this comes up. And I think I don't know if it's for me or for someone listening to just reinforce that our identity can only be in Christ. And so, Brandy Lynn, who was on previously, she talked a lot about women who do exactly what you just said. They lose their identity in motherhood. And it's not that motherhood is bad. Of course, motherhood is the greatest gift. It's not, or they lose their identity in being a wife. And it's, of course, not that being a wife is bad, but if that's above everything else. So I'm just cracking up over here that identity came up again and again and again. I think this is probably 5 or 6 weeks and counting. so, so that became all that you were about. So at this point, how many children do you have?
Well, I mean, we started having kids like every 2 years. So, um, I don't know. It was when we got pregnant with our eighth child. Things started to change because we actually lost that eighth child in a late term miscarriage stillbirth. I did deliver him. I was halfway through the pregnancy, just about 20 weeks along, and that um, it just crushed me. Like
Yeah.
I was devastated. I started, playing the blame game and like, what did I do wrong? Why? And I even went as far as like, why is God punishing me? Which, I now know God doesn't punish us and he uses all things for good. Um, but I did a lot of soul searching during that time, and also in the midst of that it was very transformational for our marriage because despite how controlling and manipulative my husband had been, he still loved me very much, and it hurt him to see me where I was, and so things started to change. Um, and I also started finding myself through that grief process and looking for all the answers and digging into my faith because I decided I had too strong of a Christian faith foundation to walk away from the faith. And I knew that God is a loving, all good God, and that this wasn't this wasn't a natural order of things.
No,
So
no. And I can't even imagine, I don't know how to say this because every loss is hurtful. But I
mhm.
think that there's something unique about a later term pregnancy that is especially hurtful, especially devastating. So how many weeks did you say you were?
I was 19 weeks and 3 days. So we already knew it was a boy. We had already named him. All of the kids were getting really excited about welcoming a new little brother into the family. So yeah,
Yeah.
there was already so much love and expectations built around him.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you have 7 other children, right?
Yeah, at that time.
Wow. So, what I think is really beautiful is that you were able to turn that loss into something that was good. So, tell me a little bit about how did you and your husband grieve through this loss?
So I started writing a blog, but I kept it private to myself, just to get everything out of my head and down, not necessarily on paper because I did it on the computer. And then it was like 6 months in, I decided to share it with some close friends and family, and the feedback I got from them, like a lot of them started coming to me and telling me that they had lost a child too that I had never even known. And so then
Really?
it opened my eyes to this actually isn't as abnormal, unfortunately, as I initially thought, and I started feeling less alone. And the more encouragement I got from them and the more gratefulness I got from them, I finally, after a year, opened it up publicly, and and I share that. And so it's just been like this little growth of sharing parts of my story from that very beginning. Um, I also joined a direct sales company. Um, and my husband was starting to give me more freedom. So I was able to grow that business. Like, I got to director level. I had 65 other women on my team underneath me. I earned every single incentive trip that was put in front of me. So there was just so much growth that came from that tragedy.
Yeah, and you guys who are listening know I'm a huge fan of network marketing, especially for moms. There's just something so beautiful about being able to be at home, be present with your kids, but to be building something. And of course, those of you who work outside the home, I'm not, you know, degrading that or anything, but for me, I just think it's the coolest. So I love to hear those stories of that. So in the midst of your loss, it seems like you and your husband really clung to each other. There was some healing that happened, and it transformed your marriage. And so, what happened next?
So that loss was in 2014. Um, then he actually in 2019 got a job working from home. He had been a public school teacher, a music teacher, and he got a at-home job for a music competition company. So he was a festival director, putting together all these festivals. So we were both at home, which was really like growing our family. But then shortly after that, as everybody knows, COVID hit. And just like when, especially for him, because it was a in-person large festivals for schools, like it killed that company. We had to try to pivot and figure out how to do things online. And then in 2021, it was the end of September. He and I both got COVID. We both got sick with COVID. Um, and we he ended up in the hospital first. I ended up in the hospital like 1 or 2 days after him. Um, we did end up switching doctors after he went in because I was not comfortable with what my doctor was telling me because I had a 4-month-old baby at that time. She was my 11th baby, but the 10th living child. So she was 4 months old. So I'm here starting to feel myself getting really sick. He's already in the hospital, and I'm like, I cannot end up in the hospital. I can't. I have 10 children that I have to take care of.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah. So thankfully, my doctor was amazing, and I was out of the hospital in 3 days. But my husband was not. He ended up on a ventilator. He was put in a medically induced coma. I did, once I tested negative for COVID, I was able to go see him in the hospital, but he was already in the medically induced coma. So all I could do was see him, stand next to him, pray for him, and just hope that he was hearing my voice.
Right, right.
He was transferred to a new hospital um, because I mean, I have lots of questions about the whole thing, but he was transferred to a new hospital, and they weren't able to help him enough, and things just kept getting worse. And on October 23rd of 2021, he passed away. Um, I was when they saw that it was going downhill so badly, they did call me in, and I spent I'm pretty sure it was 24 hours in the hospital with him. Like it's either 24 or 36. It was a very long day. I was in the hospital with him for his last 24 hours of his life. Um, just praying, and I had built this whole Christian music playlist, 24 hours of Christian music that I had the nurses playing in his room for him the whole time he was in the hospital. Just because, we don't, there is research about whether they can hear or not in a coma. So I just wanted him to have something rather than just a quiet room.
Right, right.
Yeah. So he passed away. So many people just came and supported me and the kids. Thankfully, we did have life insurance. But until that came about, people did GoFundMe's and all that kind of stuff. And the company that he had been working for was great as keeping us on the medical insurance as long as they were able to. And a lot of the people in that company actually gave up some of their time off to help us be able to get a little bit more money too.
So let's backtrack a little bit. Because so I ended up with COVID also in that same time frame, and I believe that was the Omicron variant. Do you remember?
maybe I don't remember.
Oh. So what do you think was the difference between you getting out in 3 days and him? Do you think it was, did it go to his lungs? Is that what ultimately happened?
It definitely went to his lungs. Now he had had a cough for like a year that the doctor just could not figure out. And the night before he went to the emergency room, he was starting to feel bad, started to feel that shortness of breath, but we decided just to, sleep it off because you had all these horror stories of people going to the hospital, and like it was a crazy time just trying to
Such
wrap
a
your brain
crazy
around,
time.
yeah, about what the right decisions were. So I just remember that so many people were trying to give me advice of what to tell the doctors to do and everything. And I would tell the doctors, and they would like every single time it's too late for that for him. It's too late for that for him. So, it just, I don't know if it was a timing issue. I mean, he was a little bit overweight, but I don't, it could have been his underlying issues. I do know that I have asthma, so I was on two different kinds of inhalers. And the one specific kind of inhaler, in addition to my albuterol, was actually a medicine that they were starting to use to help people with COVID. So the fact that I was already using that, I think, worked in my favor too. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
switching to the new doctor was a godsend.
Yeah, I'm, as you guys can see, I didn't know this ahead of time. So this is not performance. I actually specifically asked her not to tell me all of the ins and outs. And so I'm sitting here heartbroken, trying to think of questions on the spot, and I just can't stop. Like my brain immediately wants to go into all the who, what, when, where, why, but the fact of the matter is that you had a 4-month-old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you had 9 other children at home, and you had just experienced this pregnancy loss. And so that's where after I process the who, what, when, where, why, I just go to who you are as a person. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate? I have 10 children and I just lost my husband.
Oh my gosh, it was hard. Like all these emotions. Like I have explained it to people that it's like, they say when you are about to die, your life flashes before your eyes. Well, for me, when he died, my future flashed before my eyes. Like all of the plans that I had expected to have with him and everything, like all of that just flashed before my eyes and then disappeared. And I was just like, what the heck am I supposed to do now? And like there's a lot of crying. There are a lot of crazy nightmares. Thankfully, my best friend I've known since seventh grade, and she was by my side like that whole entire time. Answered the phone anytime I needed to talk to her. Um, and and I did make a lot of mistakes, and I also had a whole lot of people judging me too because I'm just like
What were they judging you for?
decisions I was making. Like, I did so going through that loss with my son, that was a huge, really deep grief. And I did so much grief work and praying and all that I don't want to say necessarily that losing my husband was easier, so to speak. It was more that I had already been through that darkness And I knew that I didn't want to go through the darkness the same way. And I knew that I came out of that okay. So I was going to come out of this okay. So I did.
So the Lord had prepared you.
Yes, absolutely. And there were also some things that my husband had said that made me think that he knew that he wasn't going to be on this earth much longer. Obviously, he didn't know how he was going to leave the earth, but like 5 years earlier, he had told me, and I said this in my eulogy, which I've shared on social media a few times, but he had told me in 5 years, we're not going to be living in Virginia anymore. And we're not going to have to worry about finances and all this different stuff. And the more I thought about it, because he said that God gave him this premonition. And the more I thought about it was, well, I mean, I'm not in Virginia where I'm in North Carolina, but that didn't happen until 2 years after he passed away. But he was no longer in Virginia because he's now up, with Jesus. And he doesn't have any worries about finances or anything anymore. Thankfully, we had the life insurance, so I was able to take care of a whole lot of stuff. But it's just, and when I was preparing to take him into the emergency room, he's like, I have to tell you 3 things before I go in. And I'm like, okay. He's like, you're not going to like to hear it. I'm like, okay. He's like, if I'm going to be paralyzed from the neck down, I do not want to be saved. If I'm going to be paralyzed from the waist down, then it's okay. If I don't make it, I want to be cremated. I'm like,
Really?
holy cow, yeah. He just felt it necessary to tell me those things. And before he went on his ventilator, the last things he said to me was, "I'm sorry, and I love you." So, and when he said, "I'm sorry," I'm like, you don't have anything to be sorry for. You didn't put yourself in there. But in my heart, after thinking about it, he was sorry for all of the things that occurred in our marriage and all of it. And
Yeah.
it was so hard for me because when like moments before he passed away, I just remember sitting next to him, holding his hand, and just yelling out, "This is not how our story is supposed to end." Because we were still healing from everything. There was that so much that was going to occur in the future, and it was just taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine. I can only imagine that the pain. I mean, just in telling your 10 children. I was thinking, so as we're recording this, we're still fresh on what happened with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. By the time this releases, it'll be some time, and I'm thinking of that eulogy, or that, not even eulogy, because the funeral hasn't happened yet as we're recording, the speech that Erica gave, where she told her 3-year-old, Daddy's on a work trip with Jesus so he can afford your blueberries. And that, I mean, that broke me. First of all, because I have a daughter who, like, you cannot purchase enough fruit, that I'm always like, can you slow it down a little bit? Blueberries are expensive. And so it just hit like a special part of my mama heart. But just like her, like, how do you tell a 3-year-old that your dad is gone? And your 4-month-old, I mean, it's 4 months old, but the other 9, how do you even have that conversation?
Gosh, that's still all kind of a blur in my memory. Because he passed away at like 11:55 p.m. So a friend actually picked me up, and I stayed the night at another friend's house because I was not gonna wake the kids up and tell them in the middle of the night. So I drove home the day before, and obviously I gathered them all together. And our 2 oldest sons were living on their own in an apartment, but I think they had stayed the night at our house for some reason that night. So we were all together, and I think I just put it out there because I didn't know what else to say, and I said, "Your father didn't make it," you know. Um, so obviously they cried. We hugged each other. We sat for a while. But beyond that, I can't remember um,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
specific day. But since, we are always talking about him still, we have, so he played piano at our church. And so we had a piano at home. So the piano came with us. Piano has pictures of him on it and all these fun music quotes. Um, and then for Christmas, the second year after he passed away, I believe, I made photo albums for each of the kids of just them and their dad. As many pictures as I could find of them and their dad in these photo albums. So they each have their own me and dad book. And then I made one really big, I called it The Legacy of Sean Roberts. I made a really big, like, um, photo album thing that has as much as I could find about him in all of our pictures and everything and stories. So the kids really like looking at that too. And I also gifted his parents that same book, so they have a copy of it, and I have a copy of it at home.
Love that. I love that. Hey, everybody, interrupting this episode to remind you to go to soulnaturals.com. That's SOLLE, naturals.com. Use that coupon code Kristen for $10 off. You just don't know what you might find there that might support you through whatever you're going through, and it just might be the perfect tool for your toolbox. Now let's hop back into the episode. So if you're listening, if you're a husband or wife, husbands, take pictures of your wives with their kids, and wives, take pictures of your husbands with their kids. Not only just because it's so beautiful to look back on. I feel like I'm one of those people where I feel like you cannot take enough pictures. I have had to slow down a little bit because I have teenagers who don't love being in photos anymore, but I look at the thousands and thousands of pictures I took when they were little, and I'm so, so grateful that I have all of those. Regardless of any loss, take all the photos. So let's fast forward a little bit. You're now in North Carolina. What happened that you're in North Carolina? Update us a little
So,
bit.
so despite how difficult my first marriage was, I loved being a wife. I loved being married. So I knew that that door wasn't closed for me. And that was a conversation that Sean and I had had several occasions, was because I don't know why it came up, but it would come up occasionally, and we would always tell each other, yeah, if one of us were to die early, we would definitely want you to find, someone else to be happy with. So that was one of the things that I was judged for, was that I started dating only 2 or 3 months afterwards, you know, because like I said, I went through that deep grief that first time around, and I felt ready because I knew that I wanted to get remarried. Um, and then, it was hard. Everyone's like, well, you should be concentrating on the children instead of yourself. But then I'm like, but if I don't pour in myself and allow myself to heal and to have a life, then what good am I to the kids if I'm just going to sit around and be miserable and depressed, you know? Um, so I did have a whole lot of people that were very supportive of me. So it was definitely a split. Um, and I'm so grateful for the people that stuck by my side, because it definitely was the best thing for me. So it was weird going back into the dating world, though, especially
Yeah,
having been
I can
married for
imagine.
21 years. Yeah. But after 21 years, and especially with the relationship I had with my first husband, I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want. So it made it easier to kind of weed out who was right for me. Um, so it was in May of 2022 where I met my now husband. We did meet on a dating app because it's when you have that many kids and just, it's hard to meet people. And he and I just clicked immediately. And with other relationships, like I would wait 3 days before even mentioning meeting in person. But with him, it was crazy, the connection and how easy the conversation was. So we met well, first of all, we talked until 3 a.m. that night. And then we met in person the very next day. And it was just like I really feel like God put him in my life specifically, And one of the other crazy things is the day we started talking was the first uh, wedding anniversary of my first husband, the first one without my first husband. So it was almost like he kind of had a hand in it too, giving me that kind of that signal of the day that I met him.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so he and I kind of became inseparable, and just I don't think there was one day that we didn't see each other until October 2022, when he had to go to Georgia for training for a new job he was getting. So that was
Aw.
crazy. But
And I,
he
oh, go ahead,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I
I
was
was
gonna say, I love that relationship, and my husband and I have had that, or not the relationship. Well, I do love the relationship, but I was gonna say I love the fact that you guys had that discussion. Your first husband, that's something that my husband and I have talked about a lot. He lost his mom when he was 16, and his dad never remarried. And I saw that also with my grandma. My grandma was a young widow. And I do find that to be really heartbreaking. Like, there's a part of you that understands it, that you lost the one that you thought you were going to be with forever. But at the same time, if something were to happen to me, and I'm saying this on a podcast, so all of you can hold me accountable. If something happens to me, I want my husband to be married to someone else. And I know that he would feel the same way. If something happened to him, he would want me to be with someone else as well. And so I think it's really beautiful that the conversations that you guys were able to have before, down to those details of like what would happen if I passed away, what would you want from me. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great gift that he gave me. And it does hurt my heart sometimes when I see people, because I've seen it a lot in recent years, when people are posting things about their spouse, if their spouse ever gets remarried after they pass away, they're going to haunt them. I'm like, please don't say that to your spouse.
No.
That's awful.
No,
So,
no, because ultimately when you love someone, you want them to be happy.
yeah.
And, part of how God created us is to live in relationship. That's why God gave Eve to Adam for companionship. And, you know, um, I think to say those sorts of things is, whew, do I want to use the word selfish? In a
Yeah.
way, it's kind of selfish because, like, I love my husband so much that if something happened to me, I would want him to have a companion, and vice versa. And it's out of love, I'm not there, right?
Yeah.
And I think your husband would say the same. Your first husband would say the same thing to you. I'm not there. I want somebody to love you and to step in and step into, never going to be perfect, but to step into that role, you know?
Yeah. And then the other thing, which I had to have conversations with my older children about, is that their younger siblings, they deserve to have a father too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially the 5 month old. My now husband, my second husband, is going to be the only dad that she ever remembers. And the child before her, um, was 4 when he passed away. So she's also
Oh,
going to have
gosh.
very limited memories of her birth dad. That's how,
Yeah.
it's hard to talk to the kids about how to differentiate the two dads, because they do call my second husband dad. So we
Yeah.
call Sean their birth dad. Um,
How old was
and
your oldest when Sean passed away?
21.
Okay. So he was
Yeah.
older. Yeah.
Yeah.
He or she.
He. Yeah, so
Okay.
my oldest two are boys, and then I have two girls. And each age level definitely dealt with it differently. And I will say that my son, who was, I think he was 11 at the time. No, was he 12? And he was about to turn 13. He had the hardest time. Like that 11 to 13 age, I think, because they're so impressionable. He had just started having like a real adult relationship with his dad, and his dad was torn away from him, so he's had the hardest time with it. Um,
Me.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
my son just turned 12, and that age, that even when I was an elementary school teacher, and that age, I remember teaching 8th grade and feeling like some days especially the boys would walk in as little boys that just wanted to play Legos, and then
mhm.
other days I felt like they walked in like adults. And depending on the situation, either side could come out. Like I remember there was one boy he was just so tough, and he was very popular, and he was naughty, and he, always whatever, kind of gave me a hard time. And then I pulled him in the hallway to talk about his behavior, and he burst into tears crying, saying, "Please, please, please don't call my dad. Don't call my dad. Don't call my dad." And reverted to like a child being afraid to get into trouble. And that age is tough to begin with, let alone losing your dad. I cannot even imagine. Yeah. So let's talk about post grief. So, for someone who is drowning in grief right now, the term that you and I had talked about previously is grief into growth. How did you turn this grief, not only the grief of losing a child, but the grief of losing your husband, into growth to who you are today?
So I think it was just getting that little whisper from God to share my story, because my story could be a sort of survival guide for others. Um, so obviously the first round of grief really brought growth to my first marriage. And then after losing my first husband, that brought me so much more growth, because I did a whole lot of healing and figuring out who I actually am, aside from a mother, aside from a wife, because the reality did hit me that my kids are eventually going to grow up and move away. And that was another factor in wanting to get remarried, is I want someone to do life with. I was too
Right.
young to go the rest of my life alone.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about grief. I learned a lot about myself, and I wanted other people to learn how to navigate this grief, so that um, they could learn how to navigate it a little bit quicker than I did.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and and the amount of growth that I found by figuring out my new identity has just been amazing, and it feels like this is the person that I've always was supposed to be. Um, so I have built a program to help guide people along their grief journey, because grief is not something that's ever going to go away. You need to learn how to carry it, and
Hmm.
how to still find joy in your life, despite the grief that you've had. Um,
So tell us a
and
little bit about your program. Is it an
Okay.
online program, or is it like a workshop? Tell me a little bit more about this.
So at the time of recording this, I am still growing it. So I have a 2-hour Zoom workshop where it's all has the foundation of the Christian faith. So we read from the Bible, we pray, we discuss the scripture behind how God wraps His arms around us. And we also do a creative activity, because creativity has always been a part of me, as you can see by what I have behind me, which we didn't discuss my craft business, which helped a lot. But it's because of that crafting and my strong faith that this program uh, uses both faith and creativity to help you navigate this journey, because creativity just it does something inside your brain, and it allows you to get your emotions from the inside to the outside without using words.
That's cool. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I'm so fascinated about how the brain works.
Um, I don't have my notes in front of me, but the the feel good hormones get triggered when you're doing creative stuff. And creative stuff can be, it can be drawing, it can be journaling, doodling, um, growing a garden if you have a green thumb and you love that, decorating cakes, baking, interior decorating. You know, a lot of people like to move furniture around and change their environment, and that can be a very healing thing as well. So,
Yeah. And I can attest as someone who struggled with mental health, like things like adult coloring books or painting. When I went through a really tough time in 2023 and 2024, and I pulled out my old paintbrushes and started painting and put music on. And sometimes I'm like, why don't I make that? Like I've now, since I'm doing better, I've now put them away, and I really should make it part of my, weekly or monthly. But there is something, and I've felt it, and I think the people who are listening have felt it, that there's something that happens when you use those creative gifts that God has given you. And it doesn't even have to be in the arts. Like I think of my husband who's a general contractor. Like he uses creativity in building and vision and being able to look at something and tell that it's out of level, or look at a building and know how to construct it. And so creativity isn't just limited to crafting, but crafting definitely, whether you're good at it or not, it does make you feel good. So I think that is super super cool. Um, so one last thing, and I feel like once again, I know we talked about Charlie Kirk, but I just feel like this is so powerful and so needed when you were talking about grief into growth, because we're seeing that right now as a nation. Um, like I said, at the time of recording this, we're a week and a day after the assassination. And we were talking earlier, like I had someone message me and said, I bought all the stuff for the Bible recap. I'm starting it today. Someone else that messaged me and said, I went to church. I went and talked to a pastor for the first time in years. It may have, honestly, I think it may have been a decade since this person had gone to church. I'm seeing in like the Facebook neighborhood groups where people are like, I'm looking for a church. What can you recommend? There's this searching. There's this, they're turning our country and the world, but particularly in our country, they're turning the grief. And this assassination was so unique because it wasn't like the assassination of, previous people, MLK, RFK, various other people, or even, how am I trying to say this? The reason this was unique is because we all watched it live over and over and over again. And our kids did. They opened up Instagram, they saw it. They opened up X, they saw it. They opened up TikTok, they saw it over and over and over again. It was that first couple of days after it happened, I couldn't open up a social media app without seeing the bullet enter and murder someone over and over and over again. And I think that's why this is hitting us. And I also think it's because he felt like one of us. He was a normal dad who had some kids, and he was bold enough to say how much he loved Jesus and some of the beliefs that he believed in. Whether or not we agreed with every single thing he said, he was bold enough to say it. And I think we all admired that.
so when thinking about everything that's happened with Charlie Kirk, I think that it is so important to also look at what how Erica is reacting. And I think a lot of people are looking to her at
100%.
her reaction. Because I will say, as a widow myself, she is where my mind went to directly because I have felt that pain, and just to watch her strength, which it's so hard to be strong in those moments, but you can just tell when someone is grounded in their faith and is close to God because it shines bright, and it's a testament to what God can do for you. if you stay close to him, even in the midst of grief and tragedies such as these.
Yeah, yeah. Because grief can send you one way or the other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Grief can either cause you to grow, or if you're not careful, it will cause you to move backwards, and you could easily find yourself into a depression if you don't get the help that you need.
Right. And I think we heard Erica say that loud and clear that they have no idea what they have unleashed. They, the power that you can feel coming from her. And I just interviewed Pastor Jackson Lehmeyer, who he's actually how do I say this? Charlie Kirk introduced Pastor Jackson to the Trump family, and he's now the head of presidents for Trump. And he said in the interview, the devil overplayed his cards on this one. And I really think that he did, because we're seeing in Erica that she is, and just in the American people in general, that they're like, we're done. Christians are done. They're feeling emboldened. Take politics out of it. Like, politics is the least of the importance of all of this. It's that this is wrong. And in general, Americans are using grief for a purpose, just like you did. So in light of that, I just love that your story is so timely, of showing how you turned your grief into growth, and now you're helping other people. So I wanted to say that. It felt appropriate. So any last words of encouragement to someone who maybe they did lose their spouse or a child or a parent or a friend and they're drowning? What's the first thing that you would tell them to do?
I think the next right step is prayer, turning to God. And, there's that Bible verse about taking on, gosh, I can't think of it exactly, but yoking yourself to Jesus, because the what is it? The burden is heavy, but the work is light. I'm sorry.
Yep,
um,
yep. The burden
uh,
is heavy, but the yoke is light.
yeah. So when you yoke yourself to Jesus and lean on Him, He gives you strength that you could never imagine. Um, it does take some time, but if you just continue with it and be consistent, um, amazing things will happen. Give yourself grace, lean on God, lean on your support system. Don't keep it inside. Make sure you get your feelings out, whether it's through talking to people, journaling, or even a creative activity.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Where can people find you?
So the easiest place is www.burbadesigns.com. And that has links to all my social media. It has links to all my Etsy shops and to my creative resilience programs.
Love it. Love it. Jenny, thank you. You are a gift to so many. And I can't wait to see what you do with that program. And I know it's going to bless a lot of people.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.